only 2 of the Jeffersons' children lived past infancy. Thomas Jefferson was extremely devoted to his wife. He loved her company, and although not too much is known about her, we do know that she was a tall, red-headed woman with a lovely figure and a great musical talent. She was considered a very charming personality, and he adored her company. He would spend time with her constantly as she was ill or caring for her as she was expecting their children. He was by her bedside without ceasing for 4 months leading up to her death. And after she died, he was inconsolate. He was absolutely desolate, and remained so for months, if not years. During this time, the person to whom he turned was his barely 10-year-old daughter, also named Martha, who was known as Patsy. She was the oldest of their children, and one of only 2 who survived past infancy. She would later write about how deeply her father was affected by her mother's death. He said that he really saw no reason for living after that point. It was only the care for his 3 remaining daughters which inspired him to keep going. When he finally was able to leave the house after pacing around his room for weeks, he began to take long horseback rides, and the person who would be with him in his ramblings was his beloved daughter. That was the beginning of a lifelong bond which would become the foremost and most important relationship for both of them. Now, when she was still a young woman, Patsy married. She married a young man who was the son of a good friend of her father. His name was Thomas Randolph Jr. He's actually believed to be a descendant of Pocahontas, and he himself was a plantation owner. That was the beginning of a new chapter of her life, yet she didn't leave her father's side very much, although she was married to Thomas Randolph, and then they would have 12 children together, 11 of whom lasted past infancy, which was remarkably fortunate for that era. And it seems that she inherited the disposition and strong health of her father rather than her tragically delicate mother. She was a red-headed young lady and a very intelligent girl. When Jefferson was appointed to be the foreign ambassador in France in the year 1784, he took his beloved daughter Patsy with him, and he enrolled her in a French convent school after finding out that if you were a Protestant, you didn't have to have the religious instruction. She didn't speak any French at the time, but she quickly learned it, and she would end up speaking 4 languages before she left the convent 4 years later. She was greatly educated in music and dance, as well as the other graceful charms which her father thought were very important. He had seen to her education even back in the United States, but she gained far more culture over in France. She also learned to mingle with the European aristocrats, and she saw different ways of living. Before returning to the United States, she became very infatuated with a young man who was a political ally of her father's. He was very much against slavery, as was she, but they ended up going back to the United States, and that union never came to anything, so they never were married. When Thomas Jefferson was elected to be president, he often invited his daughters to come and stay with him at the White House. And there were 2 winters when she stayed there and acted as his first lady. While she was there, she would open the house and be a very charming hostess, endearing her father to everyone. You see, he at the time already had a controversial reputation. It was well known that he was believed to be having some kind of an affair with one of his slaves, Sally Hemings. And Martha, his daughter, took it upon herself to clear her father's name of any scandal. She was very upset when she saw that there were writings against him in the press, and she made it her sole lot in life to clear his name of any bad reputation. Later, after his death, she compiled his writings and published them, seeking to dispel any rumors about him and Sally Hemings, even saying that he wasn't at Monticello some of the times when it was said that she was going to have one of her children. Some of these have later been disproven, but she was dedicated to everything her father did. Thomas Jefferson later gave another plot of land to the Randolphs so that his daughter and his son-in-law and grandchildren would be close to him. She said in some of her writings that she couldn't bear to be separated from him because, since her earliest age, his companionship had been what was most dear to her. One of the reasons why she didn't spend more time in Washington was because there was a lot of illness in the swampy lands around Washington, and Jefferson didn't want her to get sick. Also, people were a little reticent to have the president's whole family living there. They weren't too keen on the idea of the first family because they thought it was too much like European royalty.